My breathing stopped the moment I saw him across the library, Cade Moretti, the most brutal alpha werewolf on campus. But this wasn't a normal day. My chest constricted painfully, a full-blown panic attack hitting me right in the middle of the silent study hall, and my omega biology went haywire in ways I'd never experienced before. Everything blurred at the edges. The fluorescent lights became blinding spots of white pain, and my fingers turned completely numb as if the blood had drained from my extremities entirely. I desperately searched for something solid around me, something tangible and real that could anchor me back to reality, pull me out of this spiral before I completely lost control in front of everyone. Then I made a mistake, a life-changing, utterly irreversible mistake that would alter everything I thought I knew about my future. Without thinking, driven purely by instinct and desperation, I reached out and grabbed his hand. I thought touching something solid would ground me, that the physical contact would ease the panic and bring me back from the edge of complete breakdown. But the second my skin made contact with his, an electric shock tore through my entire body like lightning. Cade's eyes, normally ice blue and completely emotionless, the kind that looked right through people without seeing them, suddenly flared bright golden. The werewolf glow. His entire body went absolutely rigid, frozen in place, and he stared at me as if I'd just reached inside his chest and touched his very soul. He remained motionless for several long seconds, just watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, his breathing becoming noticeably heavier, and I knew with absolute certainty that something had gone terribly, irreparably wrong. "What the hell did you just do?" He whispered the words, but his voice carried an edge of danger that cut through my panic-induced fog. I couldn't move. My panic attack was still running its course through my system, making my heart race erratically. But now there was a new sensation layered on top. Pure fear mixed with something else entirely. Something I couldn't identify or name. Everyone on campus feared Cade Moretti. He kept to himself always, never spoke to anyone unless absolutely necessary. And rumors circulated constantly that he'd abandoned his original pack because he was classified as too feral even by werewolf standards. Then he did something I never could have anticipated in a million years. He pulled off his leather jacket in one smooth motion and draped it carefully over my trembling shoulders, wrapping me completely in his scent, sharp pine mixed with wood smoke, something dark and intensely masculine that overwhelmed my heightened senses and made my head spin. "Breathe, Jonah," he commanded quietly, and this wasn't an order barked at a subordinate. This was protection. Wait, how did he know my name? We'd never spoken before, never even made eye contact in passing. But there was no time to process that particular mystery. My panic attack began to slowly recede, my breathing pattern gradually stabilizing into something resembling normal rhythm, though my confusion only intensified with each passing second. Cade Moretti didn't help people. He barely acknowledged their existence. The librarian shot me a deeply concerned look from her desk, and reality crashed back down on me. I had just publicly touched an alpha werewolf without permission or invitation. Omegas simply didn't do that. Especially not without explicit consent, especially not when that alpha happened to be Cade Moretti, the most feared individual on the entire campus. When I'd regained enough composure to think semi-clearly again and managed to pull myself together somewhat, I tried returning his jacket, but he was already turning away from me. He dropped a crumpled piece of paper on the table and walked away without a single backward glance. His broad shoulders tense, I unfolded the note with shaking fingers, his rough, aggressive handwriting scrawled across it. "Meet me behind the old chapel. Midnight, don't make me find you." A chill ran down my spine like ice water. This wasn't a polite invitation. This was a direct summons, and something deep in my gut told me that ignoring it simply wasn't an option, no matter how much I might want to pretend this entire incident had never happened. When I returned to my dorm room that evening, my roommate Jackson took one look at me, leaned in to catch my scent, and immediately backed away from the door with his eyes going wide as dinner plates. "Bro, you're covered in alpha scent, and not just any alpha. That's Cade Moretti's signature all over you. Are you completely insane? Did you actually touch him?" "It was an accident," I defended weakly, but my voice lacked any real conviction. Jackson grabbed my shoulder firmly, his expression shifting to genuine concern. "Jonah, accidents don't leave scent markers this strong and distinctive. This looks like This looks exactly like a claiming mark. Are you okay? Did he force anything? I wasn't insane, but I was possibly desperate enough to have done something catastrophically stupid. And now I had until midnight to make a critical decision: meet him as demanded, or refuse and face whatever consequences that brought. But when I examined my wrist where he'd steadied me during my panic attack, there was a faint mark there that definitely hadn't existed before, barely visible but undeniably present. And deep down, in that place where instinct lived, I knew with absolute certainty that if I didn't show up tonight, he would absolutely come looking for me, and that encounter would be far less controlled than a planned meeting. The sun set outside my window, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and I sat on my bed staring at that faint mark on my wrist, wondering how a single moment of panic had completely derailed my entire carefully planned life. Jackson kept shooting me worried glances while pretending to study, clearly wanting to say more but holding back, giving me space to process. My phone buzzed at 11:30, making me jump. Unknown number, but I knew exactly who it was before I even opened the message. The text was brief and commanding. "I can smell your fear from here, Omega. Chapel, now. Don't keep me waiting." My heart hammered against my ribcage as I read those words 3 times, each reading making the reality more concrete. This was really happening. I was really going to meet Cade Moretti alone at midnight behind an abandoned chapel. Jackson would think I'd lost my mind completely if he knew. But I was already pulling on my shoes, already grabbing my hoodie, already making the choice that some deep part of me had made the moment our skin first touched in that library. The hours before midnight felt like torture, each minute stretching endlessly while I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, Jackson's earlier warnings echoing through my mind on an endless loop. "Don't go, Jonah. Cade's dangerous." Whatever happened in his past, it broke something fundamental inside him. But something was pulling at me. An invisible thread wrapped around my chest, drawing me inexorably toward him, and I kept trying to convince myself it was just morbid curiosity. But the truth sat heavy in my stomach. I needed to see him. At 11:45, my phone lit up with that message from an unknown number, though I knew exactly who was on the other end. "I can smell your fear from here, Omega. Chapel, now. Don't keep me waiting." It was creepy, it was possessive, and worst of all, it worked perfectly. My heart started racing immediately, adrenaline flooding my system, and I found myself moving automatically, pulling on my jacket and slipping out of the dorm before I could overthink this monumentally bad decision. I stayed hidden in my hoodie, walking quickly through the chilly night air toward the old chapel on the far edge of campus. The building had been abandoned for years, covered entirely in climbing ivy, and rumors persisted that werewolves used it for secret rituals. As I approached, moonlight gave the stone structure an eerie, otherworldly glow that made my skin prickle with apprehension. I pushed through the heavy wooden door and immediately spotted a silhouette in the shadows. Cade. He was leaning against the far wall with his arms crossed over his chest, eyes glowing faintly golden in the darkness. This wasn't just anger radiating from him. This was something much more complex. Raw intensity, possessive hunger, and perhaps pain. "You came," he said, and there was genuine surprise in his tone, as if he'd actually doubted I would show. "You didn't exactly give me much choice in the matter," I replied, trying desperately to sound braver than I actually felt. Cade pushed off from the wall slowly, deliberately, closing the distance between us with predatory grace. "You touched me today, Jonah," he stated bluntly, getting straight to the point. "I was having a panic attack. I didn't mean anything by it. You triggered a claim bond." He said it so casually, as if discussing the weather forecast, but his words made my entire world tilt sideways on its axis. My heart stopped completely. Claim bond? I'd read about them in academic texts, ancient werewolf mythology and biology. When an Omega unknowingly accepts an Alpha through physical contact during a moment of extreme vulnerability, their biology locks together permanently. Irreversible, permanent, but that was just theoretical, just stories passed down through generations. "That's not real," I managed to say, though my voice shook badly, completely unconvincing. Cade stepped right into my personal space, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, his scent making me dizzy and lightheaded. "Your scent changed the exact second you grabbed my hand. You smell like mine now, pine mixed with something sweet that's distinctly you." And he paused, his jaw clenching tight, clearly struggling with the words. I can feel you everywhere. Your heartbeat when you're nervous. Your fear when you're alone. Your confusion right this second. I wanted to step back, needed space to process this information properly, but my body refused to cooperate with my brain's commands. Because the terrifying truth was, I felt it too, a pull, a connection that was absolutely petrifying but simultaneously undeniable. Like some fundamental part of my biology recognized him on a level that bypassed all rational thought. I don't want this, I whispered, though even as I said it, I knew it was only a partial truth. Cade's expression darkened considerably, hurt flashing briefly across his features before he could mask it behind his usual cold exterior. You think I wanted this? I've been trying to stay away from you for 2 solid days. After the library incident, I locked myself in my apartment. But my wolf is going absolutely insane. It wants to protect you, mark you, claim you completely, and He ran his hand roughly through his dark hair, frustrated and barely holding himself together. I'm losing control fast. Then reject me, I challenged him, though my voice trembled noticeably. He laughed, a bitter, harsh sound that echoed off the stone walls around us. It doesn't work like that, sweetheart. The bond is mutual by nature. If you touched me during your vulnerable moment, that means your Omega has already accepted me. Subconsciously, biologically, it's already done. My breath caught painfully in my throat. This couldn't be real. I barely knew Cade Moretti. Yes, he was intense and mysterious and dangerous. But we can fight this, I said desperately, grasping for any solution. There has to be some way. Cade moved even closer, and now he was so near that I was drowning completely in his scent. Addictive, overwhelming, everything. We can try, he said softly, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But bonds don't break, Omega. They only grow stronger with time. Every day you'll need me more. Every night I won't be able to sleep without knowing you're safe. Then he dropped another devastating bomb, his eyes locking onto mine with terrible intensity. And if you touch anyone else during your next heat cycle, if you let anyone else get close to you, it will kill me, literally. Alphas can die from bond rejection. My stomach dropped through the floor. This wasn't just possessiveness or territorial behavior. This was survival. I had accidentally taken his life into my hands, unknowingly and unwillingly. And now we were both trapped in this mess together, bound by biology neither of us had chosen. The next 2 days were absolute hell. I tried everything possible to avoid Cade, but it proved completely impossible. Everywhere I went, he was there, never directly confronting me, but always hovering at the periphery of my vision. In the cafeteria, leaning against the doorframe, pretending to scroll through his phone while his eyes tracked my every movement. In the library, sitting several tables away with a book he never actually turned a single page of. Even outside my dorm building late at night, waiting in the shadows when I returned from evening classes. He wasn't stalking me in any traditional sense. He was guarding me, and absolutely everyone noticed. Why is Cade Moretti following you around everywhere? Jackson demanded when we were working together in chemistry lab, real concern coloring his voice. Seriously, this is getting genuinely creepy. What exactly did you do to him? It's a long story, I muttered while carefully measuring liquid with a pipette. And extremely complicated. Complicated? Jonah, he's literally the most dangerous alpha on this entire campus. People say he killed his previous pack alpha, and now he's shadowing you like some kind of obsessed, like I'm his bonded mate. I finished quietly, unable to meet Jackson's shocked stare. His beaker nearly slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. What? I explained the entire situation to him. The panic attack, the accidental touch, the claim bond that had apparently formed between us. Jackson looked more worried than shocked, which somehow made it worse. This is seriously heavy, Jonah. Bonds can't be broken once they form. And if this is actually real, then your entire life has permanently changed forever. But the worst part was the rumors spreading like wildfire through campus. Whispers followed me down hallways, uncomfortable stares tracked me in the cafeteria. Cade Moretti claimed an Omega. Some random guy touched him and activated an ancient bond. I heard Cade's going completely feral. Can't control his wolf instincts anymore. That poor Omega probably had no idea what he was doing. Then the absolute worst thing happened. My ex-boyfriend Jace, A smug beta who had used me freshman year and then dumped me when I got too emotionally needy, suddenly became interested again. He cornered me in the hallway right after my biology lecture ended. "So you're Cade's new obsession," Jace said mockingly, leaning casually against the lockers and deliberately blocking my path. "I honestly didn't know you had it in you, sweetheart. Managing to land the most dangerous alpha on campus." "Get out of my way, Jace," I said firmly, attempting to step around his deliberately positioned body, but he completely ignored my words. He grabbed my wrist in a tight grip, and my entire body immediately tensed in response. "Come on, Jonah. We had something really good once, before you became so clingy and demanding. Maybe we could try again." The moment his grip tightened painfully, a growl echoed down the entire hallway. Deep, utterly deadly, completely inhuman in its rage. Students immediately scattered, clearing a wide path, pure fear written across their faces. Cade stood at the far end of the corridor, eyes blazing fully golden, canines visibly extended, his entire body vibrating with barely restrained violence. "Let him go." Each word was a separate threat, a promise of violence. Jace released my wrist instantly and backed away quickly, hands raised in surrender. "We were just talking, man. You were touching what belongs to me." Cade moved forward slowly, every movement screaming predator stalking prey. "Touch him one more time and I will systematically break every single bone in your hand." Jace fled immediately and the hallway emptied within seconds. Cade approached me, still shaking with barely controlled rage, but when his eyes focused on my wrist, slightly reddened where Jace had gripped too hard, his expression transformed into something that looked almost like pain. "Did he hurt you?" He took my wrist gently in his hands, examining it with careful attention. "No, I'm fine. Cade, you really didn't need to. You're absolutely not fine. I can smell your distress clearly, your fear, your discomfort with the entire situation." He looked directly into my eyes, and for the first time I saw genuine vulnerability there. "I can physically feel it when someone hurts you, Jonah. Physically, emotionally, it tears me apart from the inside." I looked at him, really looked properly at him for the first time. His eyes held more than just possessive territorialism. There was real pain there, genuine fear, as if he was truly terrified something would happen to me. This wasn't the monster everyone described in frightened whispers. This was someone fundamentally broken, desperately trying to protect the only thing that mattered anymore. "Why do you care this much?" I whispered, though understanding was beginning to dawn. Cade's jaw tightened visibly, and he released my wrist but didn't step away. "Because you're mine now, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not. This bond is completely real, and I will protect you, even if you end up hating me for it. Even if you believe I'm truly a monster." He started to turn away, walking off like he always did when emotions got too intense, but I grabbed his arm without thinking it through. Stupid move. The contact sent an electric shock through both of us, noticeably stronger this time, and Cade's entire body went rigid. His breath hitched audibly, and he stared at my hand on his arm before slowly meeting my eyes. "Don't," he warned, voice strained and tight. "Don't touch me unless you actually mean it, Jonah, because every single time you make contact, the bond gets stronger, and I'm already barely holding on to control." "What if I do mean it?" The words escaped before I could stop them, before my brain could catch up to my mouth. Wrong thing to say. Cade's control snapped completely. He pulled me into the nearest empty classroom, locked the door firmly, and pinned me against the wall, but gently, carefully, like I was made of fragile glass that might shatter. One hand pressed against the wall beside my head, the other resting carefully at my waist. "You don't understand what you're saying right now," he growled, but his voice sounded desperate rather than angry. "Then show me. Help me understand all of this." And he did. He pressed his forehead against mine, closed his eyes, took several heavy breaths, and for one single moment, just one brief second, I saw his complete vulnerability laid bare. This dangerous alpha werewolf was actually scared of me, of this bond, of his own feelings, of losing the control he'd fought so hard to maintain. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered, and it was a raw confession. "Everyone I've ever cared about, I've damaged them somehow. I'm fundamentally broken, Jonah. You deserve so much better." "Then don't hurt me," I said simply, placing my hand flat against his chest. Don't push me away when all I want is to understand what's happening between us. His eyes opened, golden and vulnerable and desperately hopeful in a way that made my heart physically ache. And in that precise moment, I finally understood. This bond wasn't just biological inevitability. This was becoming something real. Everything shifted after that moment in the classroom, but the changes came slowly, carefully, like we were both testing the boundaries of something neither of us fully understood yet. Cade officially took me under his protection, which in werewolf territory essentially functioned as a claim without the physical bite mark. Everyone on campus knew immediately that I was off limits, and surprisingly, instead of feeling trapped or controlled, I actually started feeling genuinely safe for the first time in months. We developed a routine together that felt natural despite its newness. Cade walked me to my morning classes, maintaining a respectful distance but always watchful, his eyes constantly scanning for potential threats I couldn't even perceive. We ate lunch together, usually claiming a quiet corner table in the cafeteria where he would tell me carefully selected pieces of his past, revealing himself bit by bit, like assembling a complex puzzle one fragment at a time. I learned he originally came from a powerful pack, one that was strict and deeply traditional in ways that had clearly damaged him. I discovered his favorite reading material was actually poetry, not the violent combat manuals people assumed. I found out he secretly sketched art in private, filling notebooks with surprisingly delicate drawings that contrasted sharply with his brutal reputation. "You're nothing like what people think," I said one afternoon when we were studying together in the library, watching him absently doodle in the margins of his notebook. "No," Cade agreed quietly, not looking up from his sketch. "I'm actually worse in ways they can't imagine. But with you, I genuinely want to be better than what I am." The first real problem emerged when the campus doctor called me in for a routine checkup. Dr. Sarah Chen was a kind beta who specialized in treating supernatural students, understanding the unique complications that came with our biology. She examined me thoroughly, then made a face that immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. "Jonah, your heat cycle is approaching rapidly. Normally this would still be 2 full weeks away, but the bond has accelerated everything significantly. You're looking at maybe 3 days maximum, possibly even less." My stomach plummeted straight through the floor. "But I've been taking suppressants religiously, which won't work anymore, I'm afraid. The bond has completely rewired your fundamental biology in ways we can't reverse." She looked at me with genuine sympathy. "During your heat, you're going to need Cade's physical presence. If you try to go through it alone, the consequences could be genuinely dangerous. We're talking severe dehydration, dangerously high fever, potentially even permanent organ damage." I processed this information while panic steadily rose in my chest. "So I don't actually have any choice in the matter?" "You always have choice, Jonah, but biologically speaking, your body is going to seek him out with increasing desperation. There will be significant pain, real suffering. I strongly recommend you talk to Cade immediately and make a concrete plan together." When I told Cade later that evening, we were in his apartment, a surprisingly neat and minimalist space, with sketch pads hidden strategically in corners and on shelves. He absorbed the news by leaning heavily against the wall, processing silently for several long moments. "We'll figure this out together," he finally said with careful deliberation. "I'll be completely prepared. Supplies, medications, everything you could possibly need. And if you want me to only protect you without any physical contact beyond what's absolutely necessary, Cade, going through this will hurt you too. The bond works both directions. I genuinely don't care about my own discomfort." His voice was absolutely firm, brooking no argument. "Your comfort matters. Your explicit consent matters. Your choice matters more than anything else." This was the exact moment I realized I was falling for him, not because of the bond or biological imperative, but because of who he fundamentally was as a person. The second major problem arrived when Cade finally revealed his complete past. We were standing on his apartment balcony, the night sky brilliantly starry above us, and he spoke without looking directly at me, staring out into the darkness instead. "I killed someone, Jonah. I murdered my former alpha in cold blood. My blood didn't freeze this time. I simply waited patiently, giving him space to continue at his own pace. There was an Omega in our pack named Maya. She was incredibly kind, genuinely gentle with everyone. Our alpha decided he wanted her and forced a bond, literally dragged her through the claiming ceremony while she fought and screamed and begged for help. Nobody intervened. Nobody stopped him. Pack law stated that the alpha could do whatever he wanted with pack members. Cade's hands clenched into tight fists, knuckles going white, so I stopped him, permanently. I challenged him to formal combat, fought him with everything I had, and I killed him. I saved Maya from a lifetime of abuse, but I shattered pack law in the process. That's why I'm living in exile. You protected someone completely powerless, I said softly, reaching for his hand. I committed murder. I killed my alpha. Cade finally looked at me directly, clearly expecting horror and rejection. Instead, I squeezed his hand firmly. You saved someone who couldn't save herself from a rapist, and you would do it again if the situation demanded it, wouldn't you? Without a single second of hesitation, he confirmed immediately. Then you're not a monster, Cade, you're a protector. Sometimes twisted, occasionally violent when circumstances require it, but fundamentally a protector. He stared at me as if I'd just seen him clearly for the very first time. And perhaps I finally had. The third problem came from my family. My father called after I'd told them about the situation. Well, a carefully edited partial truth anyway. You need to break this bond immediately. Right now. Werewolves are dangerous, fundamentally unstable, statistically violent. Dad, Cade isn't like that. I don't care what you think he is. Cold statistics don't lie, Jonah. Werewolf omega bonds have the highest documented rates of abuse, controlling behavior, and domestic violence. You're coming home this weekend. Non-negotiable. I'm not leaving him. Jonah, don't be stupid about this. You're throwing your entire life away for some dangerous creature who will inevitably— I hung up, my hands shaking violently. Cade had obviously heard every word with his enhanced werewolf hearing, and his expression was carefully blank, but I could physically feel his pain radiating through our bond. They're not completely wrong about the statistics, he said quietly, still not looking at me. Those numbers exist for legitimate reasons. You're not a statistic. How can you possibly know that? He finally met my eyes, completely vulnerable. How can you know with any certainty that I won't eventually hurt you? Everyone believes I will. Your family, your friends, even you sometimes. I can feel flashes of your fear through the bond. I'm not afraid of you specifically. I'm afraid of losing control over my own life, losing my ability to choose, losing my sense of self. I took a deep breath. But I'm choosing to trust you anyway, despite that fear. Then he did something I never could have anticipated. He dropped to his knees in front of me, this powerful alpha werewolf, kneeling and looking up at me with devastating vulnerability. Your heat starts in 3 days. If you want me to, I'll stay completely away. I'll resist the bond pull no matter how much physical pain it causes me, no matter how much my wolf goes absolutely insane. You have complete choice here. Accept the bond fully or reject it entirely. I'll support whatever decision you make. My heart shattered. This was genuine sacrifice. Real, utterly selfless sacrifice. Cade was prioritizing me over himself, over his wolf, over his very survival. And if I want you to stay with me, I whispered. His eyes flashed brilliant golden, hope and terror mixing together. Then I'll stay every single second, every moment, and the bond will complete itself, permanently, irreversibly, no possibility of going back. You'll be mine and I'll be yours forever. 3 days. I had exactly 3 days to make an impossible decision. Bind my life permanently to a terrifying alpha werewolf, or take the safe route and end everything, regardless of the pain it would cause both of us. But when I looked into his eyes, so vulnerable, so desperate, so completely open, I already knew my answer. I'd known since the library when he'd wrapped me in his jacket, known since the classroom when he'd shown me his raw vulnerability, known right now, in this moment. Stay, I said clearly. I want you to stay with me. The first day of my heat cycle began slowly, almost deceptively mild. I'd thought I was genuinely prepared. I'd done extensive research, stockpiled necessary supplies, mentally readied myself for what was coming. But the bond amplified absolutely everything in ways I never could have anticipated or imagined. From the moment I woke up, my body was actively searching for Cade, craving his distinctive scent, desperately needing his touch, hungering for his physical presence in ways that went far beyond simple physical desire. This wasn't just biological need. It ran deeper, more visceral, like my body inherently understood it was fundamentally incomplete without him nearby. I'd locked myself in my dorm room, having sent Jackson to study at the library with explicit instructions. "Don't come back until tomorrow at the earliest," I'd told him, and he'd understood immediately, giving me a worried look before leaving. But as the day progressed steadily, everything got exponentially worse. Fever hit me like a freight train. Intense, absolutely overwhelming. My skin became hypersensitive, every single touch registering as painful. I wrapped myself tightly in blankets, desperately trying to find some comfort. But nothing came even close to being enough. I could smell Cade's lingering scent on the jacket he'd given me weeks ago, and it was pure torture, tantalizingly close but nowhere near sufficient. By the second day, I was barely functional. The fever reached dangerous levels, my body shaking uncontrollably. And the worst part, I could feel Cade clearly through our bond. His pain, his desperate restraint, his overwhelming need to come to me while simultaneously holding himself back because he'd made a promise to respect my choices. This was mutual torture for both of us. Then on the second night, Cade came. He knocked on my door. Gentle, patient, carefully controlled. "Jonah, let me in, please." "No," I said weakly, though my entire body was screaming the opposite, demanding I open the door immediately. "You promised you'd stay away if I wanted." I lied about being able to do that. His voice was rough, strained, clearly breaking. "I can't stay away anymore. I can physically feel your pain, Jonah. It's actively killing me. Every fever spike you experience, every moment of suffering, I'm experiencing it too. Please just let me help you." I opened the door because I genuinely had no choice remaining. And what I saw shocked me despite my fevered state. Cade was a complete disaster. Hair thoroughly disheveled, eyes wild with gold bleeding heavily through the blue, hands visibly shaking, shirt wrinkled as if he hadn't changed it in days. He was suffering too, possibly even more intensely than I was. The bond was equally painful from both directions. "You're in pain too," I whispered, leaning heavily against the doorframe for necessary support. "That doesn't matter even slightly. Your pain matters, your safety matters above everything else." He carefully touched my face, checking my fever with gentle fingers. "You're burning up dangerously. This could cause permanent damage." He came inside, and immediately my body began calming down noticeably. Just his proximity, his distinctive scent, his solid presence reduced my fever measurably. It wasn't instantaneous, but definitely noticeable. He guided me carefully to bed, wrapped me securely in blankets, handed me a fresh water bottle, and sat down on the floor beside me, not touching beyond holding my hand loosely, respecting boundaries, just present, there, protective. "You don't have to suffer through this alone," he said softly, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my hand. "I'm here now, as close as you want me, as distant as you need. Your choice entirely." And that's when I completely broke. All my fear, all my resistance, all my lingering doubts, everything crumbled entirely. I grabbed his hand tightly, and this time it was completely intentional, a fully conscious choice made with clear understanding. "I choose you," I said, my voice hoarse but absolutely certain. "I choose this bond. I choose us." Cade's eyes widened dramatically, gold completely overtaking the blue and the emotion visible there. Profound relief, overwhelming joy, shocked disbelief, genuine love was absolutely overwhelming in its intensity. "You don't know what you're saying right now. You have a dangerous fever, you're in heat. You clearly can't think straight. I'm saying this now, before it gets worse. Before I lose the ability to think clearly." I pulled him onto the bed beside me. "You protected me when you had absolutely no obligation to. You gave me genuine choice when you could have easily forced everything. You showed me trust when nobody else trusts you. Yes, you're dangerous, but you're also fundamentally good, Cade, and I trust you. Completely." Something inside Cade shattered completely. He pulled me carefully into his arms, pressed his forehead against mine, and for the first time he released his controlled restraint entirely. He held me, firm but incredibly gentle, protective yet tender in ways I hadn't expected. "If we do this," he whispered against my skin, "I will never let you go. You'll belong to me. I'll belong to you. Forever and always." "Good," I said clearly. "I don't want you to let go." The next 2 days of my heat cycle passed in a blur. Intense, absolutely overwhelming, but not frightening because Cade remained there constantly. Protective, careful, making absolutely certain I stayed hydrated, properly fed, completely safe. He never took advantage, never crossed boundaries without explicit permission. He only did what was strictly necessary. And when my heat finally ended on the third day, something had permanently changed between us. The bond had completed itself fully. I could literally feel his emotions as if they were my own. His fierce protectiveness, his possessive tendencies, his love. Yes, this was happening fast. Yes, it seemed crazy. But bonds didn't follow normal logic. And this was undeniably real. "How do you feel?" Cade asked when I was finally completely clear-headed again. "Different, complete, connected in ways I can't fully explain." I took his hand firmly. "I can feel you, right here." I touched my chest over my heart. "I feel you too," he said softly. "I have since the library, since the very first moment you touched me." We existed in temporary peace, wrapped around each other contentedly. But our happiness didn't last long. On the third night, while we were sleeping in his apartment, Cade's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He checked it and his entire body went rigid with tension. I felt his fear spike sharply through our bond. "What's wrong?" He showed me his phone silently. The message was simple but absolutely terrifying. "We know about the Omega. We're coming for him. You broke pack law, Cade. Time to pay." His old pack had found us. "They know about you now," he told me, his face pale, hands shaking noticeably, "and they're definitely not happy. In their eyes, I'm still pack property. I abandoned them, killed our alpha, and now I've claimed an Omega without any permission. They'll use you as leverage, torture you, either to force me back or to punish me for my crimes." My stomach dropped sickeningly, fear crawling up my spine like ice. "What do we do now?" Cade stood abruptly, his eyes hardening, jaw setting with determination, and I saw the dangerous alpha everyone feared emerge fully. "We have exactly two choices. We run, abandon everything, start completely new somewhere far away. Or," he looked at me directly, "we fight, we stand our ground and show them you're not just leverage, you're my mate, my equal, and anyone who touches you will have to go through me first." "I'm not running," I said immediately without hesitation. "I'm done running from difficult things." Cade's expression softened noticeably, pride and concern mixing together. "Then we fight, together." "Together," I agreed firmly, though fear was actively consuming me. But at least we weren't alone. We had each other, and perhaps that would be enough. We prepared for the fight as thoroughly as we possibly could. Cade taught me basic self-defense techniques. We planned multiple escape routes. We found a few allies among werewolves who hated pack politics. But Cade's old pack moved first, and they were absolutely brutal in their approach. They cornered me off campus when I was completely alone. A stupid mistake on my part. I'd been leaving a coffee shop, thinking I was still at a safe distance. 3 massive werewolves, all clearly experienced fighters, all obviously violent. Their leader was named Thorn. Tall, heavily scarred, eyes completely cold, and he was terrifying in a different way than Cade. This was practiced cruelty versus Cade's protective violence. "So you're the Omega who stole our wolf," Thorn said mockingly, circling me like prey he was about to devour. "Jonah, correct? Precious little thing. I can absolutely see why Cade broke code for you." "I didn't steal anyone," I said, trying desperately to sound brave despite overwhelming terror. "Cade left you voluntarily, by his own choice. Cade belongs to us. He was our strongest fighter, our best weapon, and you made him weak. With love, with emotions, pathetic." Thorn grabbed my jacket roughly. "You're coming with us, Cade will follow, and then we'll remind him what loyalty actually means." I tried resisting, but I was 1 Omega against 3 alpha werewolves. Absolutely no chance of success. Then suddenly a roar echoed across the street, primal, furious, absolutely deadly. Cade was there, transforming rapidly into full wolf form, a massive black wolf, golden eyes blazing with rage, fangs bared threateningly. He threw Thorn away from me as if he weighed nothing, then immediately shielded me behind his body. "Touch him again," Cade growled, his voice barely human anymore, "and I will rip out all your throats. Every single one of you." The fight was brutal beyond anything I'd imagined. Cade fought alone against 3 opponents, but he was desperate, protective, and surprisingly strategic in his movements. He never left me unprotected for even a single second. When one werewolf attacked from the left, Cade blocked efficiently. When another struck from the right, Cade positioned himself as my shield. But the numbers game was ultimately impossible to overcome. Thorn eventually cornered Cade when the other two distracted him successfully, and he wounded Cade's side deeply, bleeding heavily. I felt Cade's pain explode through our bond, and something inside me snapped completely. I'd always said I was weak, a powerless Omega, but the bond had given me something unexpected, a direct connection to Cade's strength. I moved suddenly without conscious thought, grabbed a fallen branch, and distracted Thorn just long enough for Cade to recover his position. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "You're stronger than you appear, little Omega," Thorn acknowledged with grudging respect. "But nowhere near strong enough." He tried grabbing me again, but Cade went completely feral, his eyes turning entirely black, movements becoming purely instinctual, his protective wolf taking absolute control. He slammed Thorn hard into a nearby wall, canines pressed against his throat. "You want to know what actually made me leave?" Cade growled dangerously. "Not weakness. Clarity. I finally saw what you all truly were. Bullies hiding behind pack law, abusing power, hurting those who couldn't defend themselves. And I refused to become one of you. You killed our alpha for an Omega who wasn't even yours," Thorn spat venomously. "I killed a rapist, and I would do it again without hesitation." Cade's grip tightened threateningly. "Leave now, and forget Jonah exists. Otherwise next time, I won't just threaten." Thorn laughed despite the obvious danger. "You've gone soft, Cade. Love made you weak." "No," Cade said, glancing briefly at me, and the intensity in his eyes was fierce, protective, absolutely certain. "It made me stronger than I've ever been. Before, I was just surviving. Now I have something worth protecting. Someone worth fighting for. Worth dying for." Thorn saw the truth in Cade's eyes. This wasn't a bluff. This was a promise. Finally, he signaled his wolves to retreat. "This isn't finished, Cade. Pack never forgets." "Good," Cade said dangerously. "Then remember this. Jonah is mine, and I protect what's mine." The pack retreated reluctantly, but they left warning looks behind. This was temporary retreat, not permanent resolution. When they'd reached a safe distance, Cade collapsed, his wounds bleeding heavily. I immediately supported him, panic rising sharply. "Hospital. Right now," I insisted. "I'll heal. Werewolf biology." But he was clearly in significant pain. I half-carried, half-dragged him back to his apartment, then spent nearly 2 hours carefully cleaning and bandaging his wounds. He watched me the entire time, intense, emotional. "I almost lost you," he finally said when I'd finished, his voice breaking. "When Thorn touched you, I completely lost control. If something had happened to you, but it didn't. We're okay. We're safe." I carefully touched his face. "We're bonded, permanently, together." He suddenly pulled me into a desperate hug, tight but careful of his wounds, and I felt his whole body shaking. Fear, relief, overwhelming emotion. Then he kissed me. Our first real, proper kiss. Desperate and relieved and full of everything we both felt. When we finally separated, we were both breathless. "I love you," he whispered, vulnerable and completely open. "I know it's fast. I know it seems crazy. I know we could blame the bond, but I love you too," I interrupted firmly. "And this isn't just the bond. This is real. You're real. We are real." And it was absolute truth. We'd started with the bond, an accidental touch, biological connection. But it had become something genuine. We'd both chosen this. Through fear, through danger, through everything. Messy, dangerous, imperfect, but completely, utterly real. Our future remained uncertain. Thorn might return. My family still opposed us. Campus still spread rumors. But we were together, bonded, equal partners. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Cade said, holding me close. "We live, we fight when necessary. We protect each other, and we prove that love isn't weakness, it's strength. Together, always, forever. You and me, Jonah, against everything." And when he kissed me again, slow, tender, promising, I finally found peace. Because I'd touched a terrifying alpha werewolf during a panic attack, unknowingly triggering a claim bond. But the truth was, he'd claimed me too, equally, completely. And we'd both chosen this bond, this love, this future, together, forever, against the world.